Have you ever lost track of which vessel on the water should be giving way? Is it time for a refresher? Hi, I'm Sailor Eric, and if you are interested in sailing, seamanship, and boat maintenance, you've come to the right channel. A refresh on navigation rules is always useful. We seek to understand the rules of the road to save time, money, and lives. We want to avoid problems, collisions, damage, and ensure everyone has the most enjoyable experience possible. Of absolute priority is making sure everyone returns to land safely. The International Maritime Organization, which went by a different name 50 years ago, created the regulations for avoiding collisions at sea, which are known today as the 72 CAL regs, as in 1972 Collision Avoidance Regulations. The US ratified these rules and have codified them within the Department of Homeland Security and the United States Coast Guard's Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook. This handbook is required to be on board of any waterborne vessel over 12 meters in length. All vessels on the water are expected to adhere to these rules. The most important of these rules is the rule which states that all captains or vehicle operators are responsible to avoid a collision at all costs. There is no such thing as right-of-way on the water from the standpoint of safety. There is no such thing as right-of-way on the water from the standpoint of safety. If a collision occurs on the water, the operators of both vessels are at fault. To distinguish between which of two vessels should carry liability and should have been more capable to avoid a collision, we refer to Rules 16 and 17 of the CAL regs, which define for us the difference between a give way and a stand-on vessel. These are important terms and will be referred to through the remainder of this video. The give way vessel is the vessel deemed to keep out of the way of another vessel and is expected to act early and substantially to keep well clear. The stand-on vessel is the vessel which is expected to keep her course and speed until it becomes apparent that the give way vessel is not taking appropriate action. Everything that follows will be based on which vessel is the stand-on vessel and which vessel is the give way vessel. I can't stress enough how important these terms are to know when it comes to the navigation rules. A hierarchy of the types and conditions of vessels, which are considered stand-on or give way vessels, are explained in Rule 18 of the CAL regs and are shown here. The hierarchy is completely based on maneuverability, so if you simply remember that the least maneuverable or least capable vessel is the stand-on vessel, while the most maneuverable and most capable vessel is the give way vessel, you will find yourself on firm footing. So as far as the hierarchy goes, recreational powered vessels must give way to all other categories of watercraft. Vessels under sail are considered stand-on vessels over recreational power-driven vessels. Fishing vessels or vessels engaging in commercial activities are considered stand-on vessels to recreational vessels both under power or under sail. These vessels will possibly have extra gear in the water or constraints that they must operate under, and recreational vessels should give way. A large vessel that requires considerable space and time to change course, such as a cruise ship, tanker, a boat towing something, or a barge, are certainly less maneuverable than other vessels. These are stand-on vessels to all previous types of vessels discussed thus far. The last category is a vessel at anchor, aground, drifting, or without power. These are all examples of vessels not under command and must be avoided by everyone. So now what if two craft from the same category meet?
Hey,
two sailboats meeting or two powerboats meeting? Knowing some nautical history will help you remember the rules we're about to cover. Rudders did not exist for ancient ships. Such ships were generally steered from the right side of the boat facing forward with a device called a steerboard. Well, you can imagine that the side of the boat where the steerboard was positioned eventually became known as the starboard side of the boat. This was the side that provided the helmsman with the greater visibility. Today's navigation rules are based on the historic assumption that the person steering the boat is generally on the starboard side of the boat and has greater visibility on that side. Therefore, if other traffic is approaching from the starboard side, the helmsman should give way to that traffic. That is why all navigation lights placed on the bow of watercraft have a green light facing to starboard and a red light facing to port. The green light to starboard is a visual indicator to vessels approaching from that side that they are the stand-on vessels, while the person looking to the starboard and seeing an approaching vessel is expected to give way. It is true today that most pleasure craft will have helm stations placed on the starboard side of the vessel. Psst. Hey, if you are a fellow sailing nerd and find this content useful, please boop that like button for me. So let's cover some general scenarios where powerboats are approaching one another to determine which are stand on or give way. And then we will move on to sailboats. For vessels under power, we will discuss when two vessels are approaching head on, when two vessels are crossing each other's path, and when one is overtaking another. When two vessels under power are approaching each other head on, both are expected to avoid collision by heading to the side where they theoretically have greater visibility, to the starboard, so they will pass each other port to port. When two vessels under power are crossing each other's path, the vessel heading toward the other vessel's port side must give way. That is the side of the vessel where they are less likely to have visibility. Here is another example. The boat facing the red light that is always on the port bow must give way. In the case where one vessel is overtaking another, the overtaking vessel gives way because that vessel is expected to be the more maneuverable vessel and more in control of the situation. I just went over a lot, so let's just quickly reinforce that if the boat you are approaching is starboard of your bow, like the boat on the right, the other boat on the left sees a green light from your bow and consider themselves to be the stand-on vessel. You in the boat on the right side of the screen must give way. Okay, that's what you need to know for power vessels. Now let's switch to boats under sail. Note that a sailboat that is using their engine for propulsion is considered a vessel under power and is expected to comply with the rules we just covered. To give us a little more context for the rules governing vessels under sail, let's go back to the ancient sailboats that steered with steerboards. This is supposed to be my steerboard. Pretend I'm a helmsman from the ancient times. Imagine if the boat I'm helming were to heel with the wind coming from the steerboard side. The steerboard would raise out of the water, and I would be less capable to steer the boat, making this sailboat less maneuverable. We learned earlier that less maneuverable boats are considered stand-on vessels, and today we maintain the rule that vessels under sail with wind coming over the steerboard side are considered stand-on vessels. The direction that the wind is coming from relative to the sailboat drives these rules. So we refer to a sailboat with wind coming from the starboard as a sailboat on a starboard tack, while a sailboat with the wind coming from its port side is on a port tack. Tack refers to the wind direction relative to the sailboat. It's easy to tell which tack a sailboat is on by looking at the sails. The sails will be on the leeward or opposite side of where the wind is coming from. The mainsail in particular is what determines which tack a sailboat is on. So in the rare case you run into a sailboat that is running with the wind behind her, with a mainsail on one side and the forward sail pulled out on the other side, it is the mainsail that is used to determine which tack that sailboat is on. A mainsail on the port side would mean the sailboat is on a starboard tack. Let's go over 3 scenarios where 2 sailboats are involved. Where sailboats on opposite tacks approach each other, where sailboats on the same tack approach each other, and where one sailboat overtakes another. When 2 sailboats approach from opposite tacks, it is assumed that the starboard tack is less maneuverable and therefore the stand-on vessel. The sailboat on the port tack must give way. When 2 sailboats approach each other and both are on the same tack, the windward sailboat is considered more maneuverable and must give way to the leeward sailboat. This is expected because the sails of the windward boat can foul the wind coming through her sails and cause what is known as a wind shadow for the sailboat to leeward. In the case where one sailboat overtakes another, the overtaking sailboat is expected to give way as it is considered the more maneuverable and capable of the 2 vessels. Again, I went through that pretty fast. So let's go back and reinforce opposite tacks approaching. The sailboat to the right of your screen is on a starboard tack with wind coming from the starboard side. The sails are leeward and on the opposite side of the wind. The sailboat with the starboard tack is considered less maneuverable and the stand-on vessel. So the sailboat on the left side of your screen, which is on a port tack, must give way. I learned an acronym that helps me remember these rules for sailboats. The acronym is POW, commonly known as the prisoner of war acronym. In this context, it represents which vessels under sail would give way. That would be the port tack, overtaking, and windward. A sailboat on a port tack gives way to a sailboat on a starboard tack. A sailboat overtaking another is the give way vessel. The windward sailboat casts a wind shadow toward the leeward sailboat and must give way. I hope you got something out of this refresher on the rules of the road. Let me know if I omitted anything or you would prefer anything else to be covered in the future. Please leave that in the comments. I want to thank all my subscribers. I appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.